I look at this and I say there are tons and tons of immoral things here. There are some morally good things in here. The difference is I don't need to accept any of this as an authority, because I recognize that the judgment in determining what's moral and immoral here comes from me. And as long as that's the case, I can chuck all of this and still keep, the things that I think are good and the things that I think are evil can be dismissed. But we got something that may actually kind of relate to this. Is it Mori?
Oh, yeah. Hi.
How you doing, Mori?
Just fine. I'm really enjoying your program there. I must start out to say that I am a Christian. But look, you guys have put the time, the effort, the energy, and it's obvious to me that you are very, you're solid in analyzing these things and so forth. And there's a million things I'd love to talk to you about. But
well, call in next week too. I mean, an email, and that's a good thing to remember. And also, and I'll let you get to this in just a second, I promise. But if I don't mention these things, I get beaten up after the show. We are going to dinner after the show at El Arroyo on 5th Street near Campbell. They'll put the address up on the screen. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us. The same is true for emailing tv@atheist-community.org. And you're welcome to call back in as often as you want. Now that I've cut Maury off, I'll let you get back to it.
Well, like I say, there's so many things that I can talk about, but one thing is that about the moral issue, and your compadre there described that pretty well. You can use reason and you can use logic and that sort of thing, but ultimately, then you would have to put this in the most succinct way I can. People that go out and commit horrible, terrible deeds, they can say that they're, hey, it's okay. Everything is okay.
They can say that, but
to themselves they can't.
But they don't. The thing is that ethics and morals didn't evolve in a vacuum. They're the product of a cooperative society. Basically, and you can look at this as in the simplest forms, is I'd rather not have my stuff stolen or be killed. And I found some other people who'd rather not have their stuff stolen or be killed. So we've gotten together and we've agreed that those things are bad. We're going to oppose them and we're going to establish laws that deal with people who violate them. It doesn't matter if somebody comes along and kills somebody and then says, well, by my moral code, it's right. That's irrelevant. You're living in our society, and in order to do that, you need to abide by these rules. I'm not making a claim that there is some absolute intrinsic right, just because we all seem, most of us would instantly say that, beating a little child to death is morally wrong.
But how can you say morally wrong? It's wrong.
Okay, it's wrong. It's ethically wrong. I'm making the determination that it's wrong.
It's also socially wrong is part of the issue.
Well,
I read an interesting summary of Eastern morality versus Western morality in sort of a philosophy book one time. It was in the form of a dialogue where somebody whose title is moralist comes up to a guy who's a Taoist, and the moralist says, I believe that there are absolute standards of right and wrong. The Taoist says, yeah, me too. The moralist says, okay, what is your highest moral principle? And the Taoist says, everybody has the right to do whatever they want. So the moralist says, that's horrible. Does that mean that somebody has the right to kill somebody else? And the Taoist says, well, yeah, the guy has the right to kill somebody, and then the police have the right to come and arrest them, and the judge has the right to sentence him to death.
I see.
When I look at this in kind of in terms that the moral issue comes up quite a bit. When I mentioned before that we may all instinctively almost come to the conclusion that killing is wrong. You don't have to think too much about it, not because there's some divine absolute moral authority that's written the code in our hearts. It's because everybody, by virtue of being alive, has an understanding of the value of that life and why they don't want it lost. Now, I happen to believe that in some sense there is an absolute moral truth. And I got this primarily after a discussion with Dennis Lubay, who hosts the Nonprofit Show with us. We talked about this quite a bit, and I agree with him. In in the pantheon of possible actions one could take for any given situation, some are better and some are worse, which means some of them are either the best possible action, and I'm not oversimplifying it. It may be best for the individual, it may be best for society, but somewhere when we go through and we make the valuation of how to weight these things, some of these actions come out at the high end of the scale. They would be either the moral absolutes or as close as we can ever possibly come. And I think that what we're doing as a society is constantly growing and evolving our morals hopefully towards that that better outcome, that more absolute truth. And I think that this is nowhere any clearer than when we look at the history of religions in particular, Christianity specifically. There have been plenty of things even 50 or 100 years ago that preachers and the Bible would say were morally correct or not morally wrong, and yet we oppose them. And that could be anything from short skirts to slavery.
Well, I'm sure you've heard the saying that Christians are not perfect, and that's why they go to church, right?
Yes.
And
no, hang on. Christians, their book supports slavery, tells you exactly how much to pay for slaves, how to treat them, how to drive a spike through their ear in order to mark them, how to give them a bride that they'll fall in love with so that when it's time to let them go free, you get to trap them.
I know. I've read Leviticus. I mean, you have to, stone people to death.
It's not just Leviticus. Jesus advocates slaves obeying their masters as well. You show me one point where Jesus comes out and says slavery, the owning of another human being, is morally incorrect. He never says it.
Okay. Give me a sec.
Okay.
There is one Christian sect that would even say that somebody that is engaging and is thoughtful, and I'm not flattering you. There's a difference between compliment and flattery. I'm not flattering you. I am complimenting you.
I understand.
Okay, good. That even a person from that corner can, have Christ and go to God. But one thing that you cannot answer, and I've tried myself, is your very existence. Where did it come from?
It came from my parents.
From your parents? Hey, come on.
I can show you my parents. Well, actually, you probably can't because they won't come on the show.
Why? Where did your parents come from? And
their parents. Yeah. Hey, can I ask you a question?
All I want to do
Where'd God come from?
I just finish and then I'll let you go. Okay. You guys are tremendous. I'm trying to.
I'm trying to lose some though.
No,
I'm trying to lose some weight.
It's true. And I think that you're maybe heading in veering off in a little bit of a wrong direction. But I think you're going to be okay. That's my point. Now, go ahead and answer your existence question.
Before we do that, I mean, the whole veering off in the wrong direction. I mean, we're coming from two completely different directions. Russell was raised an atheist. I was raised Southern Baptist and was even studying to be a minister before I became an atheist. My question is, you're asking about to explain our origins. Let's assume, and I'm not saying that I can't, let's assume for a second that we have no explanation of origins. What justifies this outlandish claim that a God did it? If we have no better explanation, what makes that one win out?
I can't say.
Okay, so now, and I'm not just saying this as a cop-out. If there's no good reason to actually justify that God did it one, and we're in a position where we have no better explanation, then the correct answer is we don't know what our origins are. It's not I'm justified in believing that Magic Man done it. It's I'm not justified in believing anything. When we talk about
like Christopher Hitchens, he says he can't explain certain things. I mean they're unexplainable.
I agree.
That's true.
There are certain things that we are incapable of explaining. We do have a good understanding of human origins, of the evolution of life. We have less of an understanding with regard to abiogenesis, but we do have good examples of how abiogenesis can happen by purely natural means, and we have a good cosmology back to Big Bang.
Okay, I think you're about ready to go off here. So can I just squeeze this in?
Sure.
Okay. Look, your questions and your position is obvious, and it's very clear, and it's very rational, and everything like that. But I think that you just take it a step further. That's all I'm saying.
Well, how so? I really, now, don't get me wrong, I really want to understand this, because I know a lot of people, like my brother, by the way, is a perfectly, eminently reasonable person who's also a Christian. And in general, we've tried to have a couple discussions about it. We tend to leave it alone. And to him, he says things that are similar to what you're saying, that yes, the points are rational and justified, but there's something in him that just can't stop believing in this God, no matter how ridiculous it may appear on the face.
That goes back to the sect, and I don't want to mention that sect, because then it's going to look like I'm promoting that, and I don't want to promote that. But there is one that does recognize all of these things that you stated, and it's a more 19th century one. But anyway,
I'm just asking what okay, my only concern is the truth. I actually care whether or not my beliefs are true or likely to be true. I prefer to believe as hang on. I prefer to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. So what I need to do is develop a way of determining which things are most likely true, which things are least likely true, so that my thoughts are at the least risk of believing false things. So when you say that there's some justification for the belief in a God, I just want to know what it is.
It's your ability to love, to touch.
How is that proof of a God? The existence of something is not proof of its cause.
God is just short for good.
Oh, well, okay, then we agree.
All right, then I believe in God now, because I believe that there are ways to judge for yourself whether things are good or bad. So if God is just another word for good, then I believe in God.
However, if your claim is that God is just good, why the hell did you start with this explain your origins? Because goodness is not an explanation for origins.
No, the issue is that he needs soldiers.
Who's a he? Good is not a he. Good isn't a he. Good isn't an entity.
As far as we know, good doesn't have a penis. I mean, you can't...
you can't say that God equals good and then go right back to personification.
And anthropomorphize it.
Penis is just a euphemistic term.
Okay, so you really didn't mean that it was good. You were just trying to avoid the question that I asked when I asked what reason was there for believing it.
No. God has to have truth. He has to have soldiers. He has to have people that are going to follow him and do his deeds and do the good. We don't go to
okay, how do you know any of that?
Let me finish, please.
No, not please. I asked a question that you can't answer, and you come back with something that's even more outlandish, that God needs soldiers. If you won't answer the first question about why you believe that God exists, at least answer what makes you think that God needs soldiers.
Okay, because he's needy.
How do you know this?
Because he's my father. And my...
Really? Can we call him?
Sure, my father needed things. He needed to clothe his children. He needed this and that. And he needs people.
As needy as we are for calls on Super Bowl Sunday, and as much as I appreciated a lot of things you had to say early on, and I think there may be some great discussions afterwards, you're doing nothing but continuing to duck the questions and then making more assertions that are even more outlandish. So on that note, I'm going to let you go, and we're going to go on to another caller. But if you come up with a better point or something that answers the question, not just the reason why you believe, but the reason why you think somebody else should, or why this should be. I mean, we're talking about shared truth here. You come up with that, feel free to give us a call back this week, next week, email, whatever. But yeah, we can't keep asking questions and have people dodging and ducking like that.